Long Walk. So this is another poem, another song about this girl who I fell for in my 20s, who now we're friends and now she's clean, dating a good guy, and she has a good job. And we play music. That's one of our favorite things. We get together and we just play songs, make it up off the top of our head. It's like it's ego stuff. A lot of times you're attracted to someone who has a similar ego to you. So if you're a strong character personality, then you're attracted to other ones with the same. And so when you make up a song, we're just playing the same chords over and over, and then I sing verses, and then she completes them, or vice versa. That's it's fun. And so yeah, a few people I've met who are able to do that, where we can just like make stuff up off the top of our head and just pretty much go on and on. She was one of them, so she's super creative. One of the smartest people I've met. I always told her that, even when she was in the throes of addiction. Met her when she was 17. That might be why I have that 17 song, the Nebraska Halloween. Yeah, so you'll find that some people inspire you. And even when I was in relationships with other people and I was ready to even possibly marry other people, she was the one who piqued my inspiration. She was my muse. And that's, I guess, what you realize in life is some people can be your muse without having to be creative or romantic love. Some people could be your partner without being romantic love. We don't have to sexualize everything. And that took me until my late 20s to realize. I was that young asshole who was like, oh, guys and girls, why aren't you fucking in? If it's a guy and it's a girl, then there's always going to be sex on the table. And then later on I realized that, everything doesn't have to be sexualized. That some people fit in your life in different ways. Yeah. So, but this, yeah, so this, I'll say the poem that I'm speaking on. Again, this has a melody too, because this has like music to it. Long walk. And we take a long walk on the ground. Heaven never saved us. Next time around, maybe we can fly on our own. But for now, maybe we belong on the ground. And you say you hate me, and we kiss, and you're saying maybe I would be missed. And you say I ask too many questions, times like this, and you smoke your cigarette. And your brother's laughing into his veins, and your mother's passing away. Too many kids, and you say you think of your father. Times like this, close your eyes, let it in. And we're meeting strangers all around town, and we're meeting danger, laughing it down. And you say you feel like forgetting you're alive, and I'm letting you drive. And when you're asleep, you're the sweetest company. And when you are dry, you can cry, and I'll say it's for me. And you say that you can't survive times like these on your feet. And we take a long walk on the ground. Heaven never saved us. Next time around, maybe we can fly on our own. But for now, maybe we belong on the ground. Thank you, thank you. I like this song. It's one of my favorite songs because it's complete. When you think about writing a song or a poem or a story, it has a beginning, middle, end. I develop an idea. I have consistent imagery, consistent language. The melody and the rhyming go really well together. I'm not so sure about the music. The way I play it, I change it up. It's fun to say. Sometimes it sounds better in like a British type accent. I can imagine it like one of these like emo type like folk singers, but like a British accent singing it. But it's a metaphor, for addiction. From a guy who I did heroin recently. That's a whole nother story. To try it, being in my 30s, and I had another little junkie friend. She's just starting a heroin addiction voluntarily, and she's 21, 22, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And I tell her my stories about people I know, and I tell her about this one who was, 13 years in it, and people I know who didn't make it out, and there's a couple who have. And it's like there's nothing you can say to these people. So I was doing my homeless walk around New York, just got kicked out of my apartment, gave up the real estate company, doing the transition, trying to start up the publishing company, trying to really do a course correct in my life. I feel like I still have the energy and the youth to do it somewhat. So I was at her place in her fancy apartment we called the Jewel Box overlooking Lincoln Square. or Lincoln Center. Um, yeah, and she had a whole bunch of drugs, and I was like, fuck it, just don't make me overdose, but I want to do this with you. And I mean, again, this intuitive knowledge, why do I do stuff like this? I just do what I feel like I should do. I listen to the voice in my head, and, you know, sometimes it leads me astray, but usually that's how I get these crazy stories and the crazy adventures. So I was telling her, I was like, I want to, and she was like, really? And I was like, no, I want to do heroin with you. So she laid out the lines, I did it, and I was like, shit. And, you know, you lay back and you're like, this shit works. I get it now. I get it. I always knew I was going to try it in my life, but definitely not now, not then in my 20s. I wasn't going to do heroin with this girl in my 20s when I was still figuring out myself. The reason why I do stuff like that now is like, I'm kind of like, I've done a lot of psychedelics. I made that money in real estate. I did the Occupy Wall Street. I think I've done enough in my life to try to start telling my story, and that was kind of like my, like, who am I, and is this drug capable of is this drug capable of overtaking me? Is it that strong? And I was like, afterwards I was like, all right, I get it. And no, like I know who I am, and I know what my values are. But definitely when I was young, I wasn't going to take that chance. I was a kid who didn't even drink in high school. You know, I didn't smoke weed until I was like 18. You know, I didn't have sex until I was 19. So and this girl, I know guys that she introduced heroin to. So I respected the drug, and so that time when I did it recently, that was like what, September, October. The video's on Facebook, I think. My first line of heroin uploaded to Facebook. And we had a good time. We were cracking up. I think there's Bob Dylan in the background. Shelter from the Storm or something. And yeah, and I laid back. I was like, I get it. This shit works. But you know what I felt? And I told her that. And I think that was what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to pass down my generational wisdom to this young punk, to tell her, like, respect the drug, and you don't, like, it's like when, like, you start a fight with a guy and, like, he's super calm and collected and he's like, all right, let's go. It's like, you don't want that fight. You want to fight the dude who's, like, you know, like, being crazy and emotional and wilding out, because that way you can be calm and collected and you can actually fight him while he's just thrashing around like an idiot. That was a good metaphor, and I totally forgot where I was going with that. I'm trying to give my strength to her as she decides to start a relationship with something I know is way over her head. Like, so when I did it, I immediately remembered the last time I had this feeling. And I had it multiple times in my life. One of them was actually the drug. It was when I had my appendicitis. I had my appendix out. That's a funny story. I was going to CSUSB, so around when I wrote that story, and I'm living at my folks, and I was like, so young 20s, which by Googling I figured out that's when your appendix decides to, you know, act funny on you. Working out, I had weights in the gym, weights in the garage, so I'm working out, cooking my post-workout meal, chicken and stuff, and I think I put too much garlic in the chicken. It gave me a little bit of indigestion. I'm like, oh man, sometimes when you're cooking for yourself as a young man, you're like, oh, a little bit of experimentation, and something goes wrong, you choke it down anyways, you're like, whatever. Didn't really cook the chicken right or whatever, overspiced it, but not gonna waste the food, I need the protein. And now my stomach's gurgling, I'm like, oh, and then I throw up. I'm like, all right, got it out, you know, better out than in. And then I'm like, I can't sleep all night, so I went to bed that night. That was around 8, 9 o'clock, and all night I'm tossing and turning in pain. You know, I think I have a pretty good pain threshold. You know, from fighting, wrestling, stuff like that. Is like, you know, I wouldn't tap. Like, I could endure, and so the pain's just getting worse and worse though. And eventually, it got to the most pain I ever felt in my life. We're not out there yet though. So I'm like, I roll over and I type on the internet. I had a computer by now, so when I went to school, I got that $10,000. It was free money. It was like, oh, sign up for a college and I get a laptop. Yeah, I want. It's like, I get out of the Army, I do that stuff with like Santa Cruz, I do that stuff in LA, I'm doing the work stuff. I'm like, all right, society, I will be a working stiff. And I was like, fuck this, I'm going to school, these guys are getting free money, and I'm out here trying to like do things the hard way. So I went to CSUSB, and now I get to like get paid to go to school. You don't realize, oh, I mean, I do realize, I just don't care. It's like, all right, signature loans basically. They're giving us like, we talk about the housing bubble, with like the extended credit. We don't talk about the fact that like any college kid is doing the exact same thing we do with the housing bubble. It's like no ability to repay at all. I just go in there and I'm like, I need financial aid. And they're like, here's $12,000 to do whatever I want with. I did have to pay some school with it, but I had a good $5,000-$6,000 I could fuck around with. So I got myself a MacBook, of course, and I went to Banana Republic and I shopped for the first time with nice clothes, and I was like, oh shit, this is what having money feels like. And then I stopped going to school and I ignored those debts. I still owe that money. Although I did get on a payment plan and start paying them. Well, I was responsible as a real estate agent, which I've since absconded on. So, I'm in there, I'm searching on the internet on my new laptop. I'm like, all right, WebMD, which is, just starting to become popular. And I narrow it down to like possibly appendicitis. Of course, it might be cancer. Everything's cancer. And I'm like, all right, let's let this ride until morning is what I said. And I'm laying there tossing and turning. And I'm trying to drink water, and that's what really bugged me. Is like I'm starting to like cramp up more and more into a fetal position. I go to the bathroom, and I try to drink a glass of water, 2 glasses of water, and I throw it up. And then I saw lower the amount, but I got down to where like I would only drink like a little swallow of water, and within a minute I would vomit it up with bile. And I was like, that's not good. So if this persists until morning, I have to go to the hospital because the pain I'm suffering through. But if you can't keep water down, like you could go without food, you'll quickly die without water. If I'm throwing up water, even the smallest amount coming into my body, that's a major problem. I'm going to need at least an IV. So in my mind of possibilities, I'm thinking at the very least I need an IV. At the very least I need to go to the hospital to get hydrated. And at the worst, I could be dying. So I'm laying there, I'm tossing and turning, and finally I wait until my folks get up. And it's like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I crawl over to the room and knock on the door. By then they had bought a house. They bought a house in Riverside. And so I knock on their door and I'm like, you guys, I think I'm sick and I need you to take me to the hospital now. And I've been sick all night, but like, this is urgent. They're like, oh, okay, mijo, it's okay, let's pray for you. And I go and I crawl up to their bed and they pray for me, good Christians. And I'm just like, like tolerating it, like, all right, this is cool and all. Like I do, at this point I haven't really broken for Christianity. Right now I really don't like using those terms because I feel like it has more baggage than what I'm trying to do with my life. I'm tolerant, but I don't, and I don't judge, but I don't use the terms in my life. But back then I was a lot more like I still identified. Even though in the Army I did that no religious preference. So, I prayed with them, asked God to help heal me. I knew it was something beyond that though. And so I crawled back to my bed and then I hear the shower start. And I'm like, they just jumped in the shower. Now they don't realize the severity. And so then I crawled to the car. I think it was, I think I had a truck at that time, maybe an F-150. I didn't have the Mercedes anymore. So I always bought beaters. So I had like, if you buy a car under $1,000 in California, you can sell it for the same price you bought it for. Always like, so I lost the Mercedes. I had like a broken down F-150 that I bought for $800. Eventually I sold it for $500 or something. And and I drove that to, I wasn't going to go to the local hospital because we grew up in Loma Linda, remember, and they have that fancy proton accelerator and that Ronald McDonald House, and it's a teaching university. So it's like, if I'm going to be dying, I drove like a half an hour to the nice hospital, like to the best one I can tell in the area. But I had to make it there without puking, so the whole time I'm like breathing like, because I couldn't, like, something was going on and I didn't want to stop. I think I ran 1 or 2 red lights, stop signs, and I just drove right into the emergency. And I just walked in and they didn't make me wait at all. They saw my face and they saw what was going on. Immediately I walked in, they put me on a stretcher, put me back, and put me on a morphine drip, or whatever you call it. But that was when I did heroin for the first time. I remember that time. In my 20s, I was like, this is what it felt like. Because that pain, which was the biggest, by that point, it was the most pain I'd ever experienced in my life. And I'd broken my collarbone. I'd been, I've hurt myself before, but that was like you're gonna die from pain. Like it was a spiritual form of pain. And then as soon as they put you on the drip, you're like, it's just relief from that. It's relief from everything. You're just like, and now you're just happy. And there's a beautiful, it was a teaching hospital, so there's this beautiful student who comes in to watch me, and she's just like to talk to me and do some stuff with the hot doctor, but she's not the doctor. But I'm sure she was cute, but she was the most beautiful woman in the world at that point. And I was just like, oh my God, I love everyone. And when I did, so recently, when I did that, I was like, I told this girl who I was doing it with, I was like, it's that feeling. It's like, I have the tapes, I recorded it. So I'm like, this is happiness. And then I was like, the other time that I felt this, other than that relief from the worst pain in my life, was when I was in love. And because I remember that too, specifically being a writer and these times in your life when you try to put it in words because you're like, I'm gonna need these words later on. So it's like you think, you stop, and you try to like describe what you're feeling, and then later on you remember, if not those perfect words, you remember that because you stopped to think about it and pause. And I think that's what writers do. We just like, even if we don't have something to write with, we're like, let me just stop and really like take this in. And it's a year after being with that girl in my late 20s, the first girl that I actually had like the relationship. I not only had the feelings of love, but I had the experience of love. I had the other person who loved me back. We were on adventures together. I had someone who, we could both die for each other. And we both like, one of the reasons why I broke up, it was too much. I was like, man, I can't, like, I remember just laying with it thinking like, I can't watch this person die, it's too much. It's like, I was thinking about my whole life being with this person and being like, am I ready to do that? And I was like, I guess I wanted to live more. I was like, I'm not ready to just do that with one person. She's in my life. She's a great person in my life. And I mean, one of the things that justifies us not being together anymore is she found someone she loves more. It's like when someone finds someone who's more of a companion to them and more of a fit than you were, then it's like, all right, we made the right decision. There was a better person out there for her. And I'm still looking for that better person for me too. Well, I've had it. Since her, I've had people, I've developed deeper feelings, I think, than I had with her. So your intuitive sense always kind of works out. But I felt that feeling like when recently when I did the H, I told the young girl who doesn't have these life experiences to compare it to, I told her this is a feeling of being with someone and waking up and just being like, I could die now. I'm happy. Like, this is what life's all about. Like, there's nothing more I want. And obviously, I broke up with her, so obviously there was more that I wanted. But at that moment, you're just honestly just blissful. Like, that's what bliss is. It's chemical bliss. And I think maybe not those exact words, but people who love deeply will relate to that. That when you're just like, I'm content. Like, this is enough. It's, I've read it on the internet when people talk about relationships and stuff, and you're just watching TV with someone and you just look up and you're just like, I'm happy. Like, I want to be with, you're my life partner. Like, it's coupling. Humans as a species, we're coupling species, obviously, even if you don't have many examples in your life, and even if you haven't experienced it, look around you. We pair up. That's what we do. We're turtle doves or whatever. We mate for life. Most of us do. A lot of us do, whatever. And that feeling that's released in your brain, everyone's very similar to that. And I looked at this girl who's 21, who's like, you don't know what the fuck you're doing to your brain right now, because you're hitting that sensor in your brain with no context at all. And that's something that as I get older, I realize that it's not just emotions and experience, or when I do psychedelics, when I do mushrooms and stuff, and acid, it's like context. If you give yourself an experience without context, you could mess with the hardwiring in your brain. And that's what I still tell her now. I talk to her, and that's one of the reasons why I did it, to show her it's not shit. It's like, I did it so that way if you become a junkie, and if you get this habit later on, and if you get lost, I can tell you I did it and I'm not there. So like, I'm like her lifeline. Like, at this moment in time, me and you are together, and now if you get lost, her pride or her ego or whatever, because that's why we're friends, is like, a lot of the young friends I have, they're just like, they think they're little Billy badasses, and it's like, okay, so if you think you're a badass and you think you're as cool as me, well then, don't let this monkey on your back. And I don't know, maybe it's not the best way to reach people. Maybe I'm just justifying my own curiosity, but I think a lot of my stupidity comes from compassion. I think I'm a lot stronger now, and I've been through some stuff in my life where I feel like not much can shake me because I've been tested. But in my 20s, I was definitely not about to mess with that. I had a healthy respect. I knew enough junkies that I had a healthy respect for it, and I stayed away from it. But this is my way to try to understand what this girl was going through. and then also knowing she grew up in Southern California with me in a conservative Christian family. I think she went to Catholic elementary school, Sacred Heart, where a kid walked into that school while we were young, while she was going there, walked into the school and shot the teacher with a shotgun, shot the principal, walked into the school, shot the principal in the face with a shotgun. She said she remembers seeing the principal after he recovered and he was missing part of his jaw. He recovered and he still was a principal and he still taught. That happened while she was going to the school. She remembers like leaving school that day because it happened and then being evacuated. So we've had disaffected youth for a while. We have more of it now. I think it's because as the anxiety goes up in society and as our narratives become less applicable to our lives, as they constrain our humanity to smaller and smaller circles, and we have less and less chance for expression, then these kids fall through the cracks. I think that they're the canaries in the mine shaft. You could call them monsters, you could call them disaffected, but the trends, if you step back and you look at the macro trend, is that they're increasing. And there's a reason for that, and it has to tie in with our culture. And our culture is becoming more constrained. So all of these things relate to each other. So yes, I threw in some like Christian stuff in here because I knew that was a part of her background. So we take a long walk on the ground. Heaven never saved us. It's those of us who, to whom the mythos of Christianity does not speak, because it's not to not speak derogatorily about Christianity, because we don't want to be judgmental, and if stuff works for other people, that's great. But for some of us, it doesn't work. And it doesn't mean that we're evil or we're bad. It's just, if you like that music, just if you don't like hip hop, does that mean I'm better than you? If I don't relate to Christianity, does that mean you're better than me? Heaven never saved us. Next time around, maybe we can fly on our own, but for now, maybe we belong on the ground. Next time around, maybe we can be sober is pretty much it. So being on the ground is pretty much, and that's what I love about this poem, is like, that's what a junkie does. They nod off. They lay on the couch and they pass out. It's like, this is like junkies nodded off on the ground. But it's also the idea of like, this girl who like I'm talking to, I still talk to her in New York. I'm not in New York right now. But there's a lot of self-blame that goes into addiction. And her thing isn't so much the heroin. I don't think, some people are affected by opioids more than others. I felt the rush, and it was an amazing way to spend a Saturday, Sunday, but I don't feel like going back. I get how people can get caught up in it. It's really hard for me to not smoke cigarettes. Some people are more addicted to nicotine than others. I really love weed. I'm not smoking this month. I told my mom while I'm staying here, I smoke a lot. She doesn't really like it. So I told her I'm not going to smoke for November, but yeah, her thing is Xanax. And Xanax has been the hardest thing in her life, and that's what she's trying to walk away from. That's what, next time around, maybe we can fly on our own, but for now, a lot of addiction is self-blame. It's like, when you come at an addict and you're hard on them, you don't think they're hard on themselves, and that's what when I talk to my friend who's clean now, she was, while she was in it, when we talk about these stories, like, what did you think that time, or when you were doing this, and this is my perspective, and I'm sorry when I was an asshole, and there's a lot of like processing when you've known someone for a long time and when they were out of it for a long time. And she was really hard on herself that whole time. I didn't really realize until I talked to her now just how hard on herself she was. It was like, from the outside, we see an asshole junkie who's just being a dick to everyone, stealing money and just being inconsiderate. But from the inside, they feel like shit every time. Like, and I asked her, because when I did it, she thinks I'm stupid. She's like, why the fuck are you I just got out of it and you're getting into it. I'm like, no, I'm not getting into it. It's just like my idiot, way of living life. It's like, I'm very experiential. I want to experience it, and I always knew I wanted to, because I knew so many people who were involved with that drug. I was like, I'm going to do it sometime to experience it. So I did it finally. And I was like, but is this like, I was talking to her about, without trying to trigger her or anything, I was like, does it feel amazing? Like, is that how you felt? Like, the whole time you were using, is it that good? And she was like, yeah, but every other time I'm not using, I feel like shit. It's not worth it. Like, that might be like the height of human experience, that I'm just pushing that button in my brain, but it's not worth the torture of every single time I'm not at that level. I'm below hell. I'm like lower than hell. So like, if you understand that from the outside, I think people would be a lot more compassionate towards drug addicts. is that they're living their own form of hell. Like as much judgment as you're putting on them from without, they're probably putting on themselves from within. And your judgment plus their judgment is only going to lead to suicide and self-harm. And addiction is also a form of self-harm. And a lot of the time it's just a form of coping with trauma. So I'm not a specialist, I'm not a counselor. All of my wisdom just comes from my experiences and the people I've loved. But yeah, that's, so I even when I was young, this is all intuitive. I didn't have all the experiences I have now back then. This is early 20s, but maybe we can fly on our own, but for now, maybe we belong on the ground. Maybe we belong, like maybe it's our fault, basically. That's the self-blame right there. You say you hate me and we kiss. You're saying maybe I would be missed. This is her coyness when I try to talk to her about emotions and let's be together and blah, blah, blah. I was like, you ask too many questions, you talk too much, I'm too cerebral. What I've learned about love is turn that part of your brain off, allow the sincerity in the moment to happen. But I was like that guy who, like my first kiss, like talking all through it, trying to analyze everything, verbal. It's like, shut that off. I mean, yeah, that's just, there's parts of your brain, let some parts take over. That's what I died. When you're deep in the throes of romance, I like to kind of turn off the talking part. And I've learned that because I've lost romantic encounters because I've overanalyzed them. Ask too many questions times like this, and you smoke your cigarette. We smoke cigarettes. And she was the type of person, you'd be smoking cigarettes, she'd finish hers and walk away from you, leave you hanging. Brother's laughing, big family, into his veins, you know. Trauma affects them all, they all have issues. Your mother's passing away, too many kids. You think of your father, times like this, close your eyes, let it in. Illusion is shooting up. We're meeting strangers around town, meeting danger, laughing it down. Illusion of connecting to people. Hooking people up. So now you're, in order to, and that's a tough thing too. Without interdiction, without needle exchanges, without safe places for them to get it and do it, that's why in some of these Scandinavian countries they also give it to them. Because you're going to start selling in order to have more of it. And now your addiction has led you into a black market with it's a dangerous world with dangerous people. The addiction becomes a priority and this is all, I'm not a sociologist, not a psychologist, these are people I've loved and lived with. I lived with this girl. You feel like forgetting you're alive, when you're in the deep throes of addiction, there's a lot of suicidal thoughts. You're letting me drive. And then me, it's like, and that's another thing, is like, you have to realize people in the throes of addiction aren't ready for a relationship, and there's a lot of healing that has to happen before they are. So if you love someone who's an addict, they don't need that right now, and it might help them, and I'm not someone to tell someone what to do. And if you think, if there's people who have used relationship to get out of addiction, I know that too. The couple who just decided, let's get sober together, so that happens sometimes, but for me, I wasn't using, and she was, and so I recognized eventually that my romantic feelings for her were selfish, and I wanted this girl to be with me when she really just needed sobriety, and me putting that on her and putting my emotions on her was just another burden when she already had all these burdens. The addiction was just to mask other trauma, which as I got to know her, I realized was the underlying issue. And then you put my needy, young, selfish love on top of all that, and that's where you learn how to selflessly love. And you also learn where to get your esteem from and where to get your needs met. That you don't prey on the weak, and you don't seek love from people who can't give it to you. And that's why we're still in each other's lives, because we're both intuitively smart enough that when we would be damaging to each other, we would take a step back. So we have many times in our life that we've taken a step back, a year, 2 years, a couple years, but then we'll circle back because she's a very unique person. I haven't met anyone else like her. I think I'm somewhat unique myself. So you let me drive. It's like, oh, I have a relationship. No, you don't. You have an addict that you're enabling. And that's what the last verse is. You're asleep, you're the sweetest company. And it's like, when they're nodded off, I'm like, oh, we're so cute, we're a couple. It's like, no, you're projecting onto an addict. When you're dry, you can cry, and I'll say it's for me. The being being, what do you call it? That's what I said about the self-honesty, is you're interpreting withdrawal and addict cycles for romance. That's what also when people love addicts, and they're like, oh, I could just save him, and that's why you want to get out of that save a home mentality, they call it. That's probably a crude term, but yeah, that's not what real romance is. It's real romance. I was told this by like some old head a while ago, like, but it's both people looking in the same direction. It's not you looking at each other. You don't want to become each other's obsession. That's a young form of romance, and that might be something that you learn from, and it might develop into something else. But both of you are both grounded in your own personality and your own belief system, but then you're both looking together. You're partners, you know. It's not one person obsessed with the other person and the other person obsessed with a drug. You can't survive times like these on your feet. It's a coping mechanism. But it's interesting. This is my young brain trying to understand love and addiction in this little time capsule.